Hello everyone, I hope you are doing fine and that you are ready to listen to today's story. Because today I'm going to tell you the history of perfume. Perfume makes us think first about fine fragrances, and I am going to talk about that too. But sometimes we forget to what extent perfumes are everywhere in our daily lives, in so many products that we use, like shampoos, like toothpastes, like detergents, and even in our food, many products that are elaborated by the food industry include artificial aromas and perfumes that are used to make them more attractive. But this is something very recent in the history of mankind, only a few decades maybe, because historically perfumes were something very marginal that were used for religious purpose or sometimes medical reasons, and that only a very small elite of people had access to. And this is the story I would like to tell you today, how the conception of perfumes, how the taste, how the ingredients have evolved over time since it appeared in the antiquity. As usual, our story starts long ago, about 4,000 years ago, in Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt. This is where perfume was born, but under a form that looks very archaic in comparison with perfume as we know it today. The modern form of perfume is a mixture of essential oils that have been extracted from various ingredients that can come from plants, but sometimes animals too. And these essential oils or olfactive compounds are diluted in alcohol or another substrate to make it usable. These early perfumes, especially in ancient Egypt, were made very differently, generally with aromatic plants that were mixed, crushed, and sometimes even cooked together before being mixed with oil in order to transfer their aromatic molecules to the oil. And the use of these perfumes was essentially religious. They were used in temples in ancient Egypt, especially. Perfumes were fabricated mainly by priests in temples, or they were used for rituals for the burial of people, and mummies, for example, were prepared, treated with various sorts of perfumes that were believed to be able to preserve not only the body but the soul too. The art of perfume flourished in ancient Egypt, and the Egyptians started to import some of the ingredients that were used to elaborate these perfumes in order to diversify them used sometimes ingredients that are still popular with the fragrance industry today, like incense, for example, like myrrh too, and various aromatic plants, basil, but also ingredients like honey or wine. For centuries, this art of perfume remained almost entirely limited to Egypt in the antique world, but what would change it and help spread the use of perfume in the rest of the world would be the conquest, the annexation of Egypt by the Romans. The Romans were admiring the Egyptian culture, and they quickly adopted the use of perfume that continued to be produced in Egypt but were exported to other parts of the Roman Empire, which made it reach Western Europe and Italy, North Africa, Turkey, and the art of perfume would continue to be developed by the Romans, still using many of the ingredients that the Egyptians had discovered and appreciated. However, in the 4th and 5th centuries, the Roman Empire started to collapse, especially in the West, and this made various aspects of the Roman culture and knowledge disappear. The knowledge of perfume remained in the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, but even there the church was fighting against the use of perfumes, especially for profane reasons, and this contributed to a decline of perfume. But this would not last very long, because the next period when perfume flourished would be with the rise of the Muslim Empire, the Arab conquest of the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Asia. The Arabs inherited a lot of knowledge and conceptions from the Greeks and the Romans, and they developed them, they pushed them further, leading to an intellectual and civilizational golden age when Europe was entering the Middle Age and had lost many of the culture of the antiquity. The Arabs and the Persians too invented distillation, which was crucial to develop the modern form of perfumes. Distillation allows you to extract pure alcohol, and this can be used as a solvent for perfumes, and it also permits to extract the essential oils that are contained in plants or glands of animals. With this knowledge, the Arabs were able to create perfumes using the scent of flowers and roses in particular. And during the Crusades, when the Crusaders coming from Western Europe came to the Middle East, they were very impressed to discover this rose water, as it was called, that seemed almost magic. It captured the essence of the flowers in a bottle. Thanks to the Crusades, or because of the Crusades, and also with the rise of commercial routes that were re-established between Europe and the Islamic world, especially through Venice. I talked about that in the video about the history of Venice. Perfume was progressively reintroduced to the Western world with the middle and the end of the Middle Age. And especially in the 14th century, it came back to Western Europe, where it was imported. Venice and other Italian cities that were beginning their Renaissance started to produce perfume too. And at this time, perfume was given medical properties. It was believed that perfumes could neutralize illnesses, that they could purify the air and protect people from the plague in particular. We know today that the plague was propagated by rats and fleas, not through the air, but this is a recent discovery, and in the Middle Age doctors were helpless in front of this disease, but nevertheless sometimes people tried to use masks in which various aromatic plants and perfumes were put, and the idea was that hiding the smells would protect them. This was not very efficient, of course, and in the 14th century almost a third of the European population died from the Great Plague. But from this time, this idea that smells, that fragrances have healing powers existed and never entirely disappeared. This is one of the bases of the modern aromatherapy, which has never been scientifically backed, but is still fairly popular. And the use of perfume was also brought to a new level of refinement as the Renaissance spread to the entire Europe through Italy, going to France, to England, to Spain, and in royal courts, people, wealthy aristocrats of course, started to appreciate perfumes as a way to show their wealth. In France in particular, perfume was popularized by Catherine of Medicis, coming from Florence. The Medicis were the ruling family of this city. She married the King Henry II just in the middle of the 16th century, and brought to the French court this habit to use perfumes. And with this habit, she also involuntarily created the French perfume industry, which developed from the 16th century and would grow dramatically in the 17th century. And it grew in France especially because the court was numerous, wealthy, and for a very bad reason, which is that people were extremely clean or much cleaner during the Middle Age, but personal hygiene in the aristocracy decreased dramatically in the 16th and 17th centuries before coming back in the 18th century, and perfumes were used to hide, to dissimulate bad smells in palaces and directly on people's bodies. In the 17th century, the corporation of perfume makers benefited a lot from two things. First, the control of international trade routes through which the ingredients could come to Europe moved from Portugal and Spain, that had been controlling them in the 16th century, to the north of Europe, to the Dutch, to the English, to the French, and this permitted to directly import ingredients, sometimes coming from very far, like cinnamon, like vanilla, coming from the Indian Ocean and Eastern Asia, like tonka beans coming from the Americas, and also ingredients coming from animals. There are two famous traditional ingredients that were very expensive that came from animals. Musk. Musk is produced by glands of several types of animals, like deers. There are musk deers, musk rats too, that were abundant in North America, and apart from the furs, this was another interest of hunting these animals. And another kind of very pricey ingredient was ambergris. Ambergris, there is sometimes a confusion with the stone amber. It is not coming from the ground at all. Ambergris comes from sperm whales. Sometimes when sperm whales absorb things that they cannot digest, like bones, for example, their digestive system creates a particular substance to wrap the object so that it is not going to harm them internally, and this is ambergris. The sperm whale then evacuates this substance that typically floated on the ocean, sometimes drifting for months, until it reached a shore, and once it had been dried, this was used as an ingredient in fragrances for its capacity to fix and reinforce other types of smells. The second thing that benefited a lot the French perfumers was the influence of the French court in Europe from the 17th century. France had been a bit marginalized during the Renaissance because of the religious wars and because of the rise of other countries. But in the 17th and 18th centuries, it regained a lot of cultural influence in Europe, and this spread the taste, the products, luxury goods in particular that were made in France. And this gave a boost to the perfume industry, especially in Paris and also in the south of France, in several cities that specialized in producing ingredients. And one city is fairly famous, the city of Grasse in Provence, that produces very famous roses and other types of ingredients such as oranges, for example, were grown in that region. In the 17th and 18th century, in many European countries, perfume makers, like many other professionals, had to belong to a corporation, a guild, and you were not allowed to produce perfumes if you did not belong to that guild, if you had not been accepted by your peers in particular. And these perfume makers were called perfume makers and glove makers, parfumeur et gantier, because it was very common to perfume gloves and use them to smell good, especially in the 18th century. The products that these perfume masters were making were perfumes in bottles, as we know them today, but they also produced perfumed powders, balms, candles, and their know-how went from extracting essential oils to preparing perfumes based on formulas that were often kept secret, and even create new formulas. From this 18th century, because the aristocracy liked fashion and changes, the perfume industry and fashion started to be associated. And a good example of that came from Germany is the invention of the cologne water, or the eau de cologne, or just cologne, that was invented in the city of Cologne, as its name indicates, by an Italian perfumer who had established his business in Germany, and he invented by the middle of the 18th century this cologne that was made of various scents like lavender, but dominated by citrus fruits scents like bergamot, like lemon, like orange, and was extremely successful, so much that it was imitated immediately in England, in France, and in other parts of Europe. The name cologne today, there is a bit of confusion with it, because it is at the same time this specific perfume, the eau de cologne, that was invented in the 18th century, but it also serves to name a given concentration of essential oils in a perfume. Traditionally, there are various levels of concentration in the perfume industry. There is the eau de parfum, perfume water, which is traditionally the highest concentration. Then comes the eau de toilette, and finally, with the lowest concentration, typically 4 to 6%, of the content of a bottle comes the eau de cologne. So cologne has two meanings, in fact. It is at the same time these original perfumes, and by extension these perfumes that have specific notes dominated by citrus fruits, and it is also a level of concentration. The perfume sector, or the appetite for perfume, was not reduced during the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, even though perfume industries developed in other countries. There were also perfume makers in Italy, in various parts of Germany, in England, and the next revolution for perfume would come in the last years of the 19th century, during the Industrial Revolution and with the progress of chemistry. Because until the second half of the 19th century, all ingredients had to be natural, which meant they were very expensive, and this limited access to perfume to an elite socially. But chemists in various countries, mainly England and Germany, started to discover and reproduce the aromatic molecules that were in natural ingredients. In particular, the vanillin was discovered, which is the perfect imitation of vanilla, and today this molecule is extremely popular still in food and perfumes alike. The coumarin too, which is the molecule that you find in tonka beans, the artificial musk too, and even though the perfume makers were very reticent to use these artificial molecules first, they progressively accepted them and started to create new perfumes in the last years of the 19th century and the very beginning of the 20th. New perfumes that used and acknowledged these artificial or industrial ingredients. And this industrial progress continued up to the point that new molecules that sometimes did not exist in nature and did not correspond to real ingredients appeared and started to be used too. And a very important breakthrough in the use of these molecules would be with the creator of the Chanel house, Coco Chanel, who sold. She did not create the perfumes, but she accepted them and sold them under her name, using new chemical compounds, especially the aldehydes, that are molecules that fix and amplify other scents. The most famous perfume fragrance using these aldehydes is the number 5, the numéro 5 by Chanel, which I think remains one of the most popular and sold fragrance in the world today. In the second half of the 20th century, artificial perfumes started to invade the consumer goods sector and entered into detergents, into all the products you can use in your bathroom, shampoos, soaps, toothpastes, many kinds of cosmetics. They entered the food industry too, and today the structure of this industry is very different from what it used to be in the past. Typically, 80 to 90% of perfumes that are created in the world come from a few companies that are not known by the public, who answer to requests for proposals from the big consumer goods and luxury good companies with a pitch for a fragrance in that can be a fine fragrance, or that can be the shampoo you're going to buy at your local store. And these companies elaborate, invent and produce these scents on an industrial scale. What is interesting, however, is that the places where perfumes are designed are still very few in the world. Most of the perfumes are designed either in the region of Paris, which has maintained this well-established tradition of creating perfumes, even though it has extended to basic consumer goods too. There is also quite a lot of creators in New York, which would be like the second capital city of perfume in the world today, and to a lesser scale, a lesser extent, you find some of them in London and in Switzerland. These are the places where the vast majority of artificial perfumes you can smell in the world, from Japan to Brazil, are designed. I hope, as usual, that you enjoyed this moment and found it interesting. Your comments and suggestions are welcome below, as usual, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.